So, this video is for 2.1.6 AOI design and majority vote. And there's inputs and outputs. There's the president, vice president, secretary, and treasurer, and the decision. If, for example, if the vice president, the secretary, and the treasurer were all ones, then the decision will equal 1. And this can be represented on the switch with these being switched to the right. This is the president, this is the vice president, this is the secretary, and this is the treasurer. Yeah. So for 2.1.6, the first thing for the algorithm is 0, 0, 0, 0, and then it should equal 0, which means the LED should be off when I start it. And the switches are on 0 right now. And it worked. The next one is president being 0, vice president being 0, secretary being 0, and treasurer being 1, and decision should be 0. And when you start the circuit, switch this to the right, and then wait a little bit, and let's see if it turns on or off, or it stays off. And for this case, it does stay off. The next one is president being 0, vice president being 0, secretary being 1, treasurer being 0, and the decision should come out as a 0. And when you start it, you should switch this to the right, and it did not turn on, so it was right. The next one is president being 0, vice president being 0, secretary being 1, and treasurer being 1, and decision being 0. And then you switch to secretary and treasurer to the right. And it's still off. The next one is president being 0, vice president being 1, secretary being 0, and treasurer being 0, and decision being 0. You switch your vice president to right, and it's still off. The next one is president being 0, vice president being 1, secretary being 0, treasurer being 1, decision being 0. Switch treasurer to right. And it's still off. The next one is president being 0, vice president being 1, secretary being 1, treasurer being 0, and decision being 0. Then you switch both up to the right, and it's still off. The next one is president being 0, vice president, secretary, and treasurer being 1, and decision being 1, which means that the LED will be on. And I've already switched it to the right, and the LED is on. The next one is president being 1, and everything else being 0. And then it's the first switch to right, and it's still off. The next one is president being 1, and treasurer being 1, and decision being 1, which the LED should be on. And I've already switched the switches, and it worked. The next one is president being 1 and secretary being 1, and that should make the decision equal 1. And I've already switched them, and it turned it on. The next one is for president being 1, and secretary, treasurer, and decision being 1. And I already flipped the switches to the right and it turned on the LED. The next one is president and vice president being 1 and the decision being 1, which will mean the LED is on, and I've already switched the switches to the right and the LED did turn on. The next one is for treasurer, vice president, and president to be at 1, and then the decision will be at 1 and the LED will turn on, and I've already switched the switches and it worked. The next one's for president, vice president, secretary all being at 1, making the LED turn on and the decision to be 1. And I've already flipped the switches that need to be switched to the right and the LED is on. The next one is for all 4 of them to be on. So the president, vice president, secretary, treasurer will all be 1 and they will all make the LED turn on and making the decision 1. And I've already switched the switches here. Then that was the final thing in the truth table.